Hey guys, it's Gunny here. So I'm doing my third blog. I thought it'd be kind of interesting this time that I want to do a blog on bow names. Now, some of you don't name your bows. I've noticed that a lot of people do name their bows, and I find it really interesting how people came up with the names for their bows. I've always named my bows. I remember my first Matthews target bow I ever got was a TRX-8 it was red riser, black limbs, and being, Cajun descent, I named the bow Rougarou. It was always kind of interesting at tournaments. People would ask me how they come up with the name Rougarou, and then I could tell them about what a Rougarou is. And then, a couple bows went by, named them, and then I came up with I got another bow one time. It was another TRX-8, and it was a yellow riser and white limbs, and I named it Puddin'. And I had some pretty good tournaments with Puddin'. And, it's funny, that name Puddin', I've actually had people come up to me that I haven't seen in a while and ask, did I ever sell Puddin' or still got Puddin'? So, I think names are kind of interesting to have on bows. Well, I got my new TRX-38 G2. Got it put together, went out and shot it. The bow is shooting phenomenal. I'm going to do a blog on it, next couple weeks once I get mobile again. For those of you who don't know, I've had my knee surgery. I'm getting around pretty good. But once I get mobile and start shooting, I'm going to do a blog on it and take you guys through it and tell you how it shoots for me. But in the meantime, I want to talk about the name that I come up for this bow. This bow is named Reckless. Now, it's not reckless from the way that you think, not being a reckless person or reckless this, but the name Reckless came out of Marine Corps history. And hopefully, you'll hang around and listen to this to the end and hear the story about Reckless, because I think it's pretty cool myself. I'm going to try to get through it. I've been through it. This is like my 7th or 8th take, and I can't get completely through with the story. Maybe I'm a sissy. I'm just saying it's the pain meds that I'm on. So hopefully maybe this time I can get through the story and tell you about Staff Sergeant Reckless. So in 1953, the early part of 53, during the Korean War, the 5th Marine Anti-Tank Battalion of 1st Marine Division occupied some ridges just out of Seoul, Korea, at the height of the Korean War. Now, the Anti-Tank Battalion were basically they ran 75 millimeter recoilless rifles, similar to the 105 recoilless rifles that guys of my era, probably had in Vietnam and maybe even to the sandbox a little bit. But it was a fairly large rifle, and it shot really big ammo, big shells. Shells were probably 2 foot, maybe 3 foot, pretty big pieces of artillery. And that's what this anti-tank battalion or regiment was for. So prior to this incident in March, I don't know how much earlier, maybe it was a year before, the Marines had bought a horse at a stable at a racetrack in Seoul, scrawny little mare, and paid $250 for this mare. Now, I want you to think about that. $250 back then was a lot of money. So anyway, they took this horse, took it back to the headquarters, and they started to train the horse, train it to be a pack horse, make it useful. And they trained it where it was artillery going off and noise and stuff, so she wasn't afraid of it. All kinds. I could sit here for an hour and talk about the training, but basically made her a combat pack horse. And in the meantime, Marines got really fond of this horse. Reckless was a nickname that they called to the 75 millimeter rifles back in those days. So that rifle, that recoilless rifle, they called it Reckless. So they named this horse Reckless after it. And, she used to sleep in the tents with the Marines, and she'd go to the mess hall and eat breakfast. And she was just, one of the troop. Well, in March 1953, at the height of the Korean War, the Marines had occupied these sets of ridges up above Seoul, South Korea. It was kind of like a last defensive point. And in the middle of the night, they started to come under a great attack, a huge siege. I mean, crap hit the fan. Now the problem was the Marines had the 75 millimeter recoilless rifles already at the top of the ridge, but supplying the ammo was a tough deal, and it was a long ways from where the ammo was to where they got it to the top of the hill. So what they did is they took this little wiry mare, Reckless, and they tied these 75 millimeter shells on her. Now I did the math on it, on how much she's weighed, and I read in the history where they said she carried about 200 pounds up the mountain. So that would, being 25 pounds a piece, that would lead you to believe they were probably 8 rounds a trip. But I think it was more like 6 rounds a trip, because another thing that was really important, what the Marines did, is they took their flak jackets off and they hung the flak jackets on this horse to kind of protect her as she made this trip. So they loaded her up and they headed to the top of the mountain. First couple, 2 or 3 trips, Marines went with her. Took her up the top of the mountain. She'd unload them, bring them down, load her back up, and do her again. Now, about the 3rd or 4th trips, the Marines didn't need to do it again, because part of the training is they taught her how to take familiar routes, and she knew the route and she knew what to do. They had a point that she loaded at the bottom. There was a point at the top of the ridges that she carried the ammo, and they dispersed it from there. So Reckless started making these trips. Now, crap is hitting the fan. There's mortars everywhere. There's rocket. There's everything. And this horse continues to go. They taught the horse how to lay down and cover when stuff hit too close to him. It was amazing what this horse could do. So Reckless would make the trips herself. She'd get to the top of the mountain. They'd take flak jackets off, unload the rounds, put the flak jackets back on her. Maybe want to hug her a little bit or something. Reckless wasn't having anything to do with it. She ain't got time for that. She got to turn around, get back down the mountain. She did again. And back and forth, Reckless is making these trips. Now, about 10 trips in, they notice Reckless coming up the mountain, and she's got this injury above her eye, and she's bleeding pretty bad. And whether it was from shrapnel, I think it was probably shrapnel or something, she got injured, so they brought her up, they unloaded her, bandaged her eye, wanted to kiss her, and you're okay. Reckless wasn't having any of it. Guys, I got something to do. Turn around, goes back down. Does this for another 10 or 12 trips. She comes back up. This time they notice that she's bleeding really bad in the flank. She's got another injury. So they unload her, they take them off, they fix the injury, put the jackets back on, time for hugs and kisses. She's got a job to do. She turns around and goes back down. 51 times. 51 times she goes up and down this mountain. At the end of this, or toward the end of this conflict, Marines were able to overcome. They drove the Chinese back, won the battle. By the way, the name of the battle? Operation Vegas Outpost. Isn't that amazing? Vegas Outpost. Maybe the 32 will do it for me. I don't know. Point was, they drove them back, and the Marines lived happily ever after. Sergeant Reckless she was still a corporal then. She got promoted, battlefield promotion to sergeant. She got 6 or 7 commendations. She got 2 Purple Hearts, good conduct, meritorious unit citation, presidential unit citation. A lot of you Korean veterans that remember the presidential unit citation, Sergeant Reckless got one of those. The one thing she didn't get that I could never figure out was she never got the CAR ribbon, combat action ribbon. I don't know why. I guess if anybody ever deserved a combat action, Reckless did. And maybe it was because she never fired around. Her fingers were kind of big to fit in the trigger well. But Sergeant Reckless didn't get that. Anyway, so the Korean War ended a few months later. Reckless was in South Korea. They didn't know how they were going to get away from there. Some people got together, put up some money, a colonel and commandant did, and they finagled it somehow. They got her back to Camp Pendleton. She lived out her life in Camp Pendleton. What I thought was kind of cool, there's a statue raised in Camp Pendleton. There's another one somewhere else. And then in 2018, at the racetrack in Kentucky, they erected a statue of Reckless. And what I thought was really cool, the 2 other horses that she was by was Secretariat and Man of War. So that's how I came up with the name Reckless. This is Reckless. Oh, by the way, I wanted to show you guys a picture of Reckless. That's her with the 75 millimeter canisters on her panniers. Okay, I know this didn't have to do with grip or shot sequence or arrow weight or shooting, anything to do with archery. I thought it'd be kind of cool to have something a little break from that. A little bit of Marine Corps history. I love doing Marine Corps history. I make a habit on every Marine Corps birthday, teach people a little bit about Marine Corps history. But that's how I got the name Reckless for my bow. By the way, she was promoted to Staff Sergeant just before she retired. So, a little bit of history. Hope you guys like this. If you do, share it with some people. Let's see if see if a lot of other people enjoyed it. I think it's kind of cool. Anyway, so oh, by the way, my leg's getting along good. They told me 2 months I'll be down from the surgery. I ain't got 2 months. Day 4 post-surgery was yesterday. I spent 20 minutes on the bike. I'm fixing to go do another 20 minutes. I hope to pick up my bow in about 3 days, actually start shooting. I'm really hoping in 2 to 3 weeks that I'll be able to set up the line and maybe shoot a few more indoor tournaments before outdoor season stops. So anyway, keep you guys breasted on that. Still got the last round of the indoor nationals coming this weekend. You guys sign up and shoot them. Good luck to all you guys. Hope you guys shoot some killer scores. All right, I'll talk to you guys later. Gunny out.